And I am really sorry that I didn't send you anything yesterday. And I hope you slept good and that we can talk soon.
When Heather Maples moved to Murfreesboro, Tennessee in January 2015, she looked forward to a new phase of her life. But just months later, she was found brutally murdered at her apartment. The tragic story of Heather's slaying forms the focus of investigation discoveries pointing to murder. Authorities made a quick arrest after finding indisputable physical evidence at the scene that led them to the killer. So, let's find out more about what happened. Heather Maples was a 22-year-old who lived in Mesquite, Texas, before her move to Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Loved ones described her as being full of life and having a contagious smile. She was working as a leasing agent at a local apartment complex at the time and had also been accepted into Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro.
She was on the phone with me, and all she kept saying was, "Oh my gosh, Mom, oh my gosh." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "I was accepted to college. I'm going to college." And I was like, "You're doing what?" She was so excited, and I was so happy for her because that was something that she did on her own. It was her proud moment.
Heather's dream was to pursue psychology. But when she didn't show up to work on the morning of August 7th, 2015, a friend went to check on her.
She had a tendency to, sleep in. And so there were a lot of mornings where I would have to call her. About 9:15, I'm like, okay, Heather's not here. So I call a couple times, I don't get any answer. I remember her saying, if I don't answer my phone, just come get me. So when I open the door, I see her mattress and I see her laying there. And I'm calling out to her, I'm like, Heather, Heather. I walk over to her and I notice that she has a top on, but nothing else. And I'm like, gosh, she really got on one last night. So I look at her foot, I tap it, I'm like, Heather? And when I tap it, I realize it's dead cold. I slowly start to back out of the apartment. I was like just breathing and thinking like, what the hell is going on? I called 911 and they say, what's your emergency? And I say, I think there's been a homicide here.
The police arrived soon after and found Heather lying on her bed. She had been struck in the head several times and strangled. One of her hands was in a fist and her fingernail was broken. The police believed Heather had been sexually assaulted due to how her body was positioned. Near Heather's shoulder, the police found a bloody fingerprint. The blood hadn't dried, so the police were able to collect a really good print. The police were able to determine that Heather had only been killed a few hours before the 911 call was placed. There was no sign of forced entry, and nothing was in disarray. Heather's cell phone was at the scene and was collected for evidence. Her cell phone was able to tell them that she had sent her final text message at 2:23 a.m. The police spoke to Heather's friend, Kelsey, who had found her body. They asked her if she knew of anyone who'd want to hurt Heather. While they were speaking, a male friend of Heather's showed up. He had come back to return Heather's keys. He told the police that Heather was very drunk the night before, and he had given her a ride home, got her something to eat, and helped her into her bed. He said that Heather asked him about her keys, but he didn't know where they were until the next day. The police now knew that Heather's door had been unlocked. Heather's friend had an alibi, and he consented to giving his DNA. He was eventually ruled out as a suspect. The next suspect was the person who Heather had sent her last text message to. They had kissed a few times, but never had a relationship. Heather had asked him to come to her house at 2:23 a.m., but he said he never got her text message. The friend said they went to a bar called Gentleman Jim's around 10 p.m. on August 6th. He said he stayed until midnight and went home to his girlfriend. He was also ruled out as a suspect. During the investigation, the police learned that Heather had an abusive ex-boyfriend who she had a restraining order against.
There had been allegations of abuse. I would hear her telling me about how he's got anger issues and he was abusing her.
It was a pretty scary thing because she called me. She was really upset and she didn't know what to do. I told her to leave and come back home, but she was determined to really make something of herself.
And there were often times where I thought, oh my gosh, am I gonna have to go over here and intervene? But I helped her get a restraining order. I pretty much just took her under my wing from there on out.
He became someone we wanted to have a conversation with about her death. Did something trigger him? Was this an act of aggression? And those are some things we wanted to know.
There was also a new boyfriend who was a registered sex offender. The new boyfriend was on probation at the time and had been in Knoxville, about 3 hours away. The abusive ex also had an alibi. Throughout all their dead ends, the police didn't give up until they learned what really happened to Heather. Heather's autopsy report revealed that she had a broken hyoid bone, confirming that her cause of death was strangulation. The medical examiner also confirmed that Heather was sexually assaulted, but there was DNA collected. The DNA was compared to the male suspects that they had been interviewed. They were all officially ruled out. Luckily, the police did have the bloody fingerprint. It was put into IAFIS, a nationwide fingerprint database. Police learned they had a match. The fingerprint came back to a 22-year-old MTSU student named Brandon Bolin. Brandon had submitted his fingerprints for a job application. He was originally from Memphis and had an arrest from 2012 for public intoxication and disorderly conduct. However, there was nothing in his past about him being violent. The police learned that Brandon and Heather were Facebook friends and had hung out a few times, especially at Gentleman Jim's. The police tracked Brandon down and brought him in for questioning. The police asked Brandon about how he knew Heather. Brandon said he had been to Heather's apartment a few times, and she had been to his place. The police asked Brandon when he last saw Heather, and he said around 6 weeks ago. The police, knowing that was a lie, confronted Brandon about his fingerprint being on her bed. Brandon said he had been with his friend on August 6th. He said they went to Gentleman Jim's until about 2:30 a.m. He said they then went to a restaurant called Handlebars until about 5:30 a.m. Brand said he dropped his friend off and then went home and woke up for class the next morning. The police learned from Brandon's friend that they had left Handlebars around 3:45 a.m. and went to Kroger's until about 4 a.m. During the interview, he seemed upset and said he didn't know that Brandon was capable of doing something like this.
Ever been to her apartment?
I have been to her apartment.
The times you had gone over there, did she have to let you in, or was the door unlocked, or do you remember?
So I think she usually left her door unlocked, so.
Let me ask you this, have you ever been sexually intimate with her?
The first night. No, second night. Second time ever.
You hooked up with her?
Yeah, we did.
When's the last time you were at her apartment?
That might have been in July.
You know you were there, you know what happened. So now you need to tell me so that I can understand.
I don't know I was there. I don't know I was there. That's the thing.
Okay, well then how did your bloody fingerprint get on the bed?
There's no way I did anything. She just got accepted into college. I was happy for her.
young man, because this is important. They can put you to death. Do you understand? Okay. Because this is the most important conversation you had in your life. The only way your bloody fingerprint got there is your hand's bloody. And you had your hands on her while you were raping her. So tell me what happened.
Brandon said he had been with his friend on August 6th. He said they went to Gentleman Jim's until about 2:30 a.m. He said they then went to a restaurant called Handlebars until about 5:30 a.m. Brandon said he dropped his friend off and then went home and woke up for class the next morning. The police learned from Brandon's friend that they had left Handlebars around 3:45 a.m. and went to Kroger's until about 4 a.m. During the interview, he seemed upset and said he didn't know that Brandon was capable of doing something like this. The police were able to confirm the friend's story. He consented to giving his DNA and was ruled out. Brandon's DNA was a match to the rape kit. He was the only one involved in killing Heather. The police believe that Brandon and Heather had run into each other at Gentleman Jim's on August 6th. Heather went home around 2:15 a.m., sent one last message at 2:23, and fell asleep. Brandon then entered Heather's unlocked apartment, took advantage of her, and killed her. When the police obtained Brandon's cell phone, they found a recorded video of Heather in her final moments.
It was one of the most shocking videos I have ever seen in my career. I was watching the final moments of the life of Heather Nicole Maples.
Brandon was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and aggravated rape. In February 2018, Brandon pled guilty to second-degree murder and aggravated rape. He was sentenced to 40 years for murder and 15 years for rape.
I forgive Brandon Bolin for killing my daughter. From that day forward, I learned, don't worry about anything and pray about everything.
It in no way meant that I forgot what he had done. I'm supposed to forgive, and so that's what I did.
The police believe Brandon would have had done this again and again if he hadn't been caught. They think he probably has a history of this in his past somewhere. Heather was nice to everyone and probably believed she and Brandon were friends. Brandon took Heather's kindness as something else. He deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison, where he won't be able to do this to anyone else. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode. Stay safe. Bye.